essay today. The Boston Massacre, Wendel's Family by Aila MacIntosh. Me. March 25th, 1770. It is just another evening here in Boston, except it felt like our world had turned upside down 3 weeks ago. It was hard to remember what it was like before March 5th. Felt like everything, including my family, had changed. I cannot believe it, Mother yelled. Her life was usually calmed us and sang us songs. For the first time in my life, I thought her sweet voice sounded harsh. Those lobsterbacks crawling around our Boston, killing 5 poor patriots. Madmen, I tell you, madmen. How can we feel safe with these murderers? She held up an engraved print by silversmith Pallavi. Honey, please, my father said. They usually agreed, but not now. It was Sabbath. My father insisted Sunday was a day to be calm and prayerful. Right now, though, we are not calm or prayerful. Mother was patient. I'm sorry, dear. This horrible event made me lose my temper. She sat down on her chair with her back straight, gazing into the fire. For a moment, she seemed like her usual self. My mother was usually calm. I could never be like her. My father always told me, with a smile, I have too much spirit. These past weeks, Mother was furious. I watched her quietly. I'm not usually the quiet type. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet, she'd stay relaxed. I could see she'd try. But she lost her composure. She started talking, no longer angry, but sad. Remember the light snow that Monday? It was a normal day. The shops were busy. I wasn't far from the custom house and could hear shouting. We colonists are rightfully tired of the township taxes. It was only snowballs that tired. Snowballs that hurt. They were full of rocks and clams, and don't forget the insults thrown as well, my father added. Snowballs and insults were less than bullets. I heard it was confusing. Someone on Captain Preston yelled fire. Honestly, this is a foolish thing. Whoever yelled out fire obviously went mad. Blood is on his hands. The saddest thing of that horror is the first to die, Pistons Adams. He was an escaped slave. I heard he was a brave man, a true patriot. May he rest in peace, all 5 patriots for America. Mother stopped when she noticed Sarah's big brown eyes staring at her. Mother, yes, darling, what happened to the lobsterbacks? Do not call them lobsterbacks. We need to watch what we say, Father warned. He turned to Mother and said, I love you, but enough. The world may very well change for this, but we have to live our lives in the meantime. You only see the old world eyes. You only see the new world eyes. Fair enough, she turned to us. I don't think I should talk any longer. It's Sunday. Off to bed, quickly now. Please tell us, we begged. Children, Father said, what your mother says goes. Now off to your loft. That's all right, dear, Mother said, patting Scholar's strong back. Mother had a beautiful smile. It was nice to see it again. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. You asked what happened to the soldiers? Well, what happened is, they will soon go to court. John Adams will represent them, finished Father. His cousin Sam is a true patriot, Mother whispered. John Adams is a patriot who believes in truth and justice. A fair trial will decide the fate of the 8 soldiers. Children, pray liberty will one day come to our land. We're off to sleep. That was my essay. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Madison Anderson, and I'm the 7th grade winner from the Wyck Junior High, and here's my essay. As I groggily walked out of my bedroom that early morning, I heard the door slam. It was my older brother. He seemed upset, but I couldn't make out why. I figured the best way to find out was to quietly perch myself on the top of the staircase so I could eavesdrop on the conversation below. By the tone my parents were using, I could tell there was something very wrong. They were discussing the newspaper that my brother had just brought home. I caught bits and pieces of their conversation, phrases like they just shot and graphic. I couldn't make out anything more despite my best 12-year-old spying abilities. I tiptoed my way down the stairs in hopes of getting a better listen. As I got closer to the epicenter of the discussion, I could feel the urgency and panic in their voices. The 3 of them were hovered over the front page of the newspaper. Now my curiosity and concern had reached an all-time high. I had to figure out what was going on. I slowly approached my mom and looked over her shoulder, trying my best to make out the headlines. She must have felt my presence and turned to look at me. She had such fear and sadness in her eyes. I mustered up the words to ask her, "Is everything all right?" She moved over just slightly. That's when my world changed. The image on that paper, followed by my parents explaining to me what had just happened, was scarring to my mind. I could almost feel the pain that was written all over the colonist's face. I could almost hear them yelling for help. The image showed British soldiers lined up firing at the colonists in front of the custom house. I hadn't thought that a picture could affect me so much, but now looking down at this image of some of the colonists falling to death triggered something in me that I had never felt before. It was a mix of rage and disappointment that I couldn't control. Why? Why do they shoot at innocent people and that poor dog? None of it made sense from the image to the explanation. I looked down at the image again. Horrifying was all I could think of it. From the blood pouring out of the colonists to the smoke clouds forming at the tips of the soldiers' guns, the image was anything but pleasant. My parents tried to calm me down, but it didn't seem to be working. Now that I was aware of what was going on in the world around me, nothing anyone could say or do could dampen the gruesome image left in my mind. It would forever leave a heavy weight on my mind that I don't know if I could ever erase. It wasn't until 10 years after the American Revolution had ended that I had started to realize the impact that the Boston Massacre had in the American Revolution. Although only 5 people had been killed, the image portrayed the British as malicious and tyrannical. What the image showed wasn't the complete truth about what happened, as there was more to it than the picture portrayed. I have later been enlightened to why the fight had broken out, but this still gave the soldiers no reason to shoot at the innocent colonists. The Boston Massacre had expedited the American anti-British movement and bolstered the patriot population in comparison to the loyalist population. Just a few years after the Boston Massacre, the American colonists continued to rebel against the British, which led into the Boston Tea Party. Looking back with the insight that we have of the Boston Massacre, the image that was portrayed still makes the British appear just as despicable. Although the Boston Massacre was a significant event, it wouldn't have been so impactful if it weren't for the image illustrated by Paul Revere. The image etched into my brain since the first time looking at the newspaper, was the catalyst for the turning of the tide of the revolution, which I saw later, and not the Boston Massacre in itself. Thank you so much for choosing my essay. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity.
Hi, my name is Pallavi Gangasani, and I'm going to be reading my essay about the Boston Massacre for the Melzingah chapter of the DAR Essay Contest. The Boston Massacre. Despite my mother and father warning me about the dangerous British soldiers, I never expected them to slaughter civilians in the streets near my own home. The British have proven they are ruthless. Christopher, myself, and all the others were just trying to demonstrate how furious we were at how we've all been treated by the British. That Ebenezer Richardson did not have to shoot into the crowd. He killed my closest friend, Christopher Cedar, and for that I will never forgive him or the British. That bloody brawl will forever be ingrained in my mind. It will likely be a long time before my fellow colonists will recover from this tragedy as well. It is now 6 days after Christopher's death. The images of that day remain as vivid in my head as ever. Seeing my friend die is the most shocking memory of them all. I was standing right in front of him, and if I had not tripped over the layers of my skirts and fallen, I might have taken that bullet instead. I continued to wake up each day with my heart racing, my ponytail ruffled, and my palms sweaty. I have not eaten in days. All I feel is despair. It is now 3 weeks since I began mourning my dearest Christopher. Although I thought the events of the last day with him were brutal, it was nothing compared to the most recent massacre that took place a few days ago right here in Boston. I was there, too. As I sit at the breakfast table with my older siblings and parents, we all try to make sense of all the past week's turmoils. My older brother James just stares out the window, pondering some topic which he does not share, as my mother serves us a scrumptious breakfast that under normal circumstances I would have devoured. My father breaks the silence with a remark about the massacre. He says, "It was bound to happen, between Christopher Cedar's death and the ever-rising taxes while getting nothing in return." My brother James comes out of his reverie and responds, "Indeed, the British have never cared about us colonists, raising taxes so we have to pay off their debt? Outrageous." My older sister Sarah responds, "Obviously they've never cared about us. They just kill us. The bloodbaths they created." Father exclaimed, "Unacceptable." My face points down in the direction of my undesired food, as my father and brother list those who died. Father catches sight of my solemn expression and quickly changes the topic by saying, "Oh, Mary, I'm sorry." I quickly say, "It's okay, Papa." James says, "At least now many other colonists will realize what the British are capable of." Mother adds to Father's statement, "Yes, if people were unsure about whether they should be a patriot before, they certainly are not now." Father continued, "Certainly most of the colonists are patriots now. After the British killed those 5 men, there is no way colonists are still loyal towards them." I slightly nod in agreement as I pick at my food. I try to think of something other than the brutal murder of my friend. For the rest of breakfast, we sat in a dreadful silence as I finally finished eating as much as I could force down. 3 more weeks have passed since the massacre, and it is all my family has been talking about at dinners. These conversations are still difficult to hear because talk of death only serves to remind me of Christopher, who I continue to mourn. My brother James asks, "Did you see Paul Revere's engraving?" Father says, "Yes, what was that all about?" The engraving certainly seemed to frighten everyone. Sarah piped in, "Truly it is a monstrosity." James replies, "The purpose was most likely to show terror with that image of the British soldiers standing in a line while firing at the crowd. What else could it suggest with that depiction of the massacre?" I cannot help but add, "The engravings are not even accurate. The British did not shoot in an orderly fashion. I know, I was there." "You never should have been anywhere near there," said Mother. But Father responds, "True, the Townshend acts were bad, but they did not have the same effect of turning the colonists against the British as the engravings seem to have done." Sarah responds, "Yes, the unfair taxes put on items are for us to pay off the British war debt. Why should we pay for their troubles?" At that moment, I realized how much change has come about in the colonists' opinion of the British. My mother sternly says, "Enough talk about the massacre. Finish your food." I took a few more bites of food and cleared my plate. I looked down at my food and noted my progress in the amount I have eaten compared to the past weeks. Later that night, I thought to myself how unified the colonists were becoming in response to the massacre. I have more hope for the rebellion against the British. It is now a year later, and the pain of losing Christopher has become a little easier to bear. Still not a day goes by without me thinking of Christopher. Our colonies have evolved. I now see many colonists ready to fight against the British. I now have hope that one day we will have justice and become free from the British. If it should come about, perhaps Christopher's death and the deaths of those in the massacre were not in vain.